All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Al LeGros. I'm the chair of the Comprehensive Plan Task Force. This is the October 22nd, 2024 meeting. And I'd like to quickly go around and have everybody just introduce themselves for the record.
Phil Taylor.
Bob Eaton.
Dave Brown.
Brian Hurst.
Amy Hubble.
George Prince.
Mark Ironman.
Kevin Johnson.
Matthew James.
Peter Lieberworth.
Marianne Naif.
Okay, thank you very much. Starting out, just a couple of quick announcements. I just want to reiterate the fact that we are not going to be meeting the second meeting of November and December to give people a chance to decompress and spend time with their families and so on on Thanksgiving and Christmas. We'll only have one meeting at the beginning of November and December. The other two meetings will be canceled. Also, there will be an anchor article coming out in the first part of November dealing with the future land use plan. I borrowed heavily on what Mark presented at the last meeting, and so I want everybody to recognize that what you're going to see in the anchor is not a finished product, but it's a rough outline, if you will, structure of what the plan might entail. The other thing I wanted to mention, I was at Shaw's earlier today. Uh-oh, it sounds serious.
6 o'clock.
Okay, they put out these papers on I guess it's a monthly basis, the Working Waterfront. And I would, if you're by there, you happen to go by there, there are a couple of articles that I would just recommend to you. One is on what they call a blue economy, but the bottom line is it's about lobstering and the prognosis for the next 10 or 20 years. And I don't have to tell our fishermen here in the crowd that there are certainly going to be challenges that are going to have to be met. The other things that are in here deal with housing and also comprehensive planning. And so I would just encourage people, if you're by there and you have a chance, pick it up. It's not going to necessarily change anything that we're doing, but I think it's just interesting to see what other people are saying about these particular topics. I was going to have approval for the minutes for 9/24 and 10/8. Our chief administrator, scribe, Kayla Matthews, is only available one day a week, and so she's a little bit behind, so we'll take care of that the next meeting. So, the main purpose of this meeting is to continue our discussion that started at our last meeting dealing with future land use planning. Hopefully everybody got the information that Mark sent out several days ago. I had a chance to take a look at it, and I think I want to, at this point, turn it over to Mark and let him kind of go through what he thinks are the important parts of this particular submission. So over to you, Mark.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, one other housekeeping item. Based upon discussions that Al and Matt and I had, we asked Judy Colby George to give us a proposal to assist in really being editor and compiler of the final draft, not to really have any role in the policies or the recommendations. We got a proposal from her, and there is some money left over in her original contract, and with the additional time, the estimate was that the town would need to come up with an additional $2,500 to $3,500. There will be an item on the select board agenda on Thursday to authorize spending up to $4,000 on additional spending of $4,000 for their work to take all the edits that we give them and put them in the final document, clean everything up, organize it, redo the future land use map, deal with this state issue of growth in rural areas, et cetera. That's not new money, though. There was $10,000 that was added on to the amount of money that had originally been appropriated by town meeting at the start of the project, the ARPA money. And so it's not new money that goes into this. It's simply using money that's, excuse me, I'm tangled up in a cord down here.
Ooh, what cord could that be?
I don't know, is it?
Watch out, the light doesn't
just
go out
pull
on
on
the microphone.
Let me get that for you.
You're tangled up in a cord.
Yeah, there are two cords down here,
Well, yeah, because this one's.
right under my feet.
Oh, okay.
And every time I move my feet, I'm getting wrapped up in them.
Quit fidgeting.
Yeah.
What'd you say, quit bitching?
No, I said I love you like a brother. Keep moving.
Okay. And so that'll be on the select board agenda, and hopefully they will approve that. And
Do you want me to do anything with respect to that meeting? Do you think I need to be there to present anything, or you
I
feel?
don't think so.
Okay. Just
okay.
Get the net.
All right. I'm going to repeat what I said in the cover email that went with the attachment. First of all, I'm sorry things were so late, but things on my personal side of my life have been a little confused because Carol's father fell a few weeks ago, broke his knee, lives alone, etc. And then this morning he fell again and broke his leg, and so we've been doing things other than we would normally be doing. What I did is, rather than try and edit what was in the plan, in the draft, I stepped back and said, the organization in the March draft is, to me, confusing. There's a whole separate future land use plan section. But then if you go to the goals, policies, and strategies, there's another future land use plan section that deals with sort of general topics. I said, that doesn't make sense to me. We should put it all together in one section. So what Al and I and Matt discussed was we would simply take out the freestanding, if you will, future land use section. We would put everything together in one land use section in the goals, policies, and strategies section. And I think Al has proposed that the land use one would be the last one in there.
Right.
So what I did is I gave you, I called it a rough draft, and it really is a rough draft because I was going fast putting this together. And I would describe it as a kitchen sink draft in that I threw everything in that seemed to make sense, that may have come up in previous discussions or may be there. So what I did is I took and created an inventory section that I called the current situation, in which I tried to paint a picture of what Harpswell is today how it has had a dispersed pattern of development in the recent past, and why it's likely to continue to have a dispersed pattern of development in the future. I did that intentionally because of the idea that the state growth management rules call for comprehensive plans to designate growth in rural areas. Early on, the task force made a decision that it would ask the state for an exemption from that requirement that's provided for in state law. And so this is intended to sort of create the framework that says the kinds of things that you can request an exemption on, applies in Harpswell. So I did that. Then I took the land use objectives that we reviewed at the last meeting. I cleaned those up some. I added the ones that we talked about, and I put those in. And then I created a land use policy section that builds a little bit on what was in the March draft, not in the freestanding future land use plan section, but in the goals policy section. And I tried to think about what were the, if you will, non-geographic specific issues, things that applied kind of town-wide or through much of the town. So I said, what are the goals? And this is me. I made this up. And we need to sit here and say, do we all agree with it? First goal, maintain the town's scenic and rural character. Second goal, manage the town's fractured bedrock aquifer. We can quibble over language. Protect the water quality of the town's water bodies. Assure that the character and scale of new development is appropriate for Harpswell. Goal 5, require that new development consider the implications of climate change. Goal 6, facilitate the continuation of the working waterfront. And the final one, expand opportunities for attainable housing. What I did then under each of those is followed the pattern of the other section and said, what are the relevant policies related to those, each of those goals? And then what are the strategies that would move the town in the direction of those policies or goals? I tried to strike a balance between general and specific in doing that. And we should spend some time and go through and sort of look at, it's kind of like peeling the onion. Do we agree with the goals? Are these the right goals that we should address? Some of these verge into other topics. And then are the things under the goals that we think are there, are they on target? Are there other goals that should be outlined under the land use section? Should some of these be removed? And then I just plugged in as a placeholder the first cut on the future land use plan that we looked at briefly at the last meeting, and said that future land use plan really consists of two parts. One, narrative descriptions of various designations, and then a future land use plan map that shows where those designations apply. That's what I did, that's as far as I got. My suggestion is we go back to the beginning and look at sort of the introductory paragraph in the current situation and think about whether that provides a realistic picture of the town and where we are with respect to land use as the start of thinking about the future.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a quick note, the thing that I really liked actually as I read this is I like the format. It starts from the top and lets us start to look down. I'm thinking just how the public has gotten bits and pieces, and this has been going on for over 2 years. This gives a really good snapshot, I think, when you're starting to look at land use planning at the end. So I like the way it's presented, actually. And it allows us, as time goes on, to develop each one of those areas more, maybe more specifically. But that's just my general comment right now.
Other comments?
I also found it very helpful, this kind of overview and starting from the very general and then not getting too bogged down in very specific policy elements.
Yeah, I hope I speak for everybody. I think getting rid of that future land use plan as an extraneous chapter before you even get to the goals, policies, and strategies in our current draft is perfect. Just should be gone. Most of the content is all that argumentative stuff about zoning and so on anyway, so first of all, I really want to support that. I do note that then what you've produced is 8 pages that takes the place of, in some respects, if you start on page 35 of our current draft, takes the place of 3 pages. And that's never, to my mind, a particularly good.
Wait, say that again?
You've got an 8-page document you sent to us.
Yep.
It's in effect going to replace the land use section inside the goals and strategies, which is actually only 3 pages.
But it's also going to replace the whole
Section.
future land use section, which is 15 pages.
Well, except that the land use section, the standalone section, is mostly all these sections that I think pretty much the town in public meetings and us as a group have pretty much rejected. I mean, you could go through it, and I might be wrong, and I may be overly enthusiastic in using excising stuff, but the recommend.
You're talking about the district.
Look at all this stuff here, these tables and stuff.
That's
It's
gone.
gone, exactly. So even that extraneous section is a pretty short section. I'm just hopeful, I'm arguing that I think we could reduce this and render it down like a good soup.
That's fine. As I said, I did the
Yeah.
kitchen soup, the kitchen sink version, and put everything in that you might
Yeah.
want to think about.
Right, and that's useful.
But
When you start with-
I thought just the opposite, that all the stuff that's there now, which totals how many more pages, is gonna be supplanted by this. So it's only 7 pages.
Well, be careful though, because section D is still going to expand some.
And, no, but look at the draft, the current draft we have of that earlier stuff that was frankly produced by our consultants, is all gone.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you knock all that stuff out, that first section of theirs, I haven't done the math, it's probably 2 pages, actually, maybe 3, actually survives the town's input and our conclusion. So in a way, we've got, if there are 3 pages on the internal document, maybe there's 3 pages left. we are doing what committees do, which is we accrete things. And Mark, I really appreciate that your approach has been to give us a look at all the stuff we've been doing so that we can look at it. I'm just urging us now to try to be as careful as possible. If you put too much in this thing, people are not gonna read it, they're gonna feel confused, and we don't gain by that. Simplicity is what we need, and but let's just get on with the discussion, and we'll see if it becomes simple.
Well, we might be able to trim down the narrative a bit, but I tend to think this is a good replacement for the things that already exist in the plan.
Yes.
I think the other part that we don't see, which is gonna be part of the task that Viewshed does for us, is convert what we agree to here in the future land use section into a map that changes the maps that are presented here in the executive summary. and
Correct.
in the future land use plan. So I think the visual impact of the map, along with, we could take a harder look at trimming this down verbally, would be a good replacement for what already exists in the plan. And I think in the end, we're gonna be ahead.
Yep.
In terms of pages saved. Let me go back and just say, does anybody have any substantive objection to anything that's been stated here in terms of the objectives or land use, let's say sections B or C?
Go back to A first.
All right, A.
Go to current situation.
Okay,
This current situation, are there anything in there that is not necessary, doesn't reflect the current status that you would like to see changed, edited, deleted, or anything that needs to be added?
Peter.
I have a question, and I acknowledge I missed the last meeting, so maybe this was discussed then. In the last section, in the last paragraph of section A, you refer to the reduction in the inventory of available properties for sale. I've kind of heard it discussed a couple times that increased amount of short-term rental properties may have an effect on what the inventory of properties for sale is. Do we mention that anywhere in here? Is it worth mentioning? Is it not relevant to this particular document because it's covered elsewhere?
Well, I thought I put that in here someplace.
Maybe I missed it.
So you're suggesting if it's not in there to add it?
Well, so I'm asking, does it make sense to add it? Because I think it's a part of the current situation, and maybe it should be. If it's de minimis, if it's not really making a difference, we don't need to incorporate it. But if it is withdrawing inventory that could be for sale, maybe we could at least say it's going on.
Yeah, this paragraph comes almost unchanged out of the March draft.
Well, the notion of short-term rentals, we sort of have skirted that issue somewhat because of the experience that or the feedback that we saw when short-term rentals was brought up specifically in the committee that was established 6 or 8 months ago, maybe more. Do people think that I guess you can argue both ways. Is that a substantive change to what we're really trying to say here, which is basically the housing prices going up, and a lot of people can't afford it.
Yep.
I mean, that's,
I would question whether
because short-term rentals are really kind of.
it's sort of skirts the issue a little.
It's
I
an
mean,
economic,
Yeah.
there's an economic aspect there that makes it very difficult to kind of rope it in with
it's a hot button issue, and I'm not sure we need to get into it here.
Because we're not solving it in here, that's the thing, and we're not even.
I think there's a thematic issue, and maybe there are, if we get the consultants back, they can help us solve it. The trouble is, we've got two categories we've got future land use and we've got housing as a separate category. And now, all of a sudden, we've got a substantive paragraph under future land use on housing. And the question is, how do these two relate to, and are they just crossing over each other and repeating themselves? My instinct is to take that paragraph, which is that last paragraph of Part A, and basically put it in under housing and just reference the fact, under the current situation, we have a housing problem and it's covered in section bang. But we're just, to get into substantive housing issues under land use, probably ought to be under our housing section, I just think. It's an
Except
organizational
that-
question.
Except that one of the things that we're proposing here in land use is providing some flexibility so that, expand the opportunities for attainable housing. So, part of the land use goal and the policies articulated here really address a certain type of housing that people seem to feel, at least a number of people seem to feel, Harpswell is important. So I don't think housing per se and land use are exclusive of one another. That's just my view.
Yeah, I mean, we could, here's, I don't like to edit on the fly, but I'm gonna suggest doing it. We could take out that paragraph, because it kind of is a different character than the rest of it, and simply go to the end of the paragraph that's, starts on the top of my page 2, that says, in addition to new construction, there is a steady pattern of older homes, we could simply add the sentence in that said, Harpswell is also seeing a dramatic rise in housing costs and a reduction in the inventory of available properties for sale, period, and leave it there.
The content of your paragraph is good, though. I'd move it into the housing section.
There is a similar
Oh,
Okay.
discussion of the cost of housing in the housing
The other
section.
thing I would add, and the task force has not seen this, I sent in an input to Matt and Mark dealing with the executive summary. Because when you look at, and this is pages 9 through 15 or something, 16. When you look at the first couple of paragraphs in the executive summary, some of the content of that appears in the paragraph that we're talking about. And so, we're not necessarily gonna lose. The only thing that does not appear in the paragraphs and rewrite of this page, and I will get it out to everybody, is the information about prices escalating from 2015 through the current day. But talking about, the nature of the peninsulas and the beauty of the community, and the fact that there's an aging population, loss of young families, all of that has been brought out in this rewrite of the executive summary, which I thought was an opportunity to kind of set the stage. In fact, what Mark has done, the current situation, I was sort of thinking the same thing relative to the executive summary. So maybe between those two things, we can
Okay.
reduce the language a bit and avoid, you agree? I don't know if you've seen.
No, yeah, I agree, yeah.
Okay. And I'll get what I.
Let's not get entangled in the.
Okay, any other
editing here.
feedback on current situation? If not, I'm gonna try and keep us moving.
Good.
Okay, land use objectives. I did a little editing of the list we looked at last week. I added things about let me see if I can find them. On my top of my page 3, there's a bullet that says, protect deep water ocean frontage from industrialization to facilitate access for commercial fishing and similar uses. And we added, enable the creation of attainable housing, the last bullet in there. And other than that, there was just some minor editing and cleanup in those objectives.
I have a question.
Those are both additions from our last meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. What is industrialization of the
Yeah.
waterfront?
You'll have to ask Matt that question. I think it means to avoid the location of large-scale uses such as a wind power port or a large shipbuilding
LNG dock.
facility
Yeah.
kind of use.
I think we better define it, because I'm looking at this and thinking, we're talking about being a waterfront fishing community, and we're talking about industrialization of the waterfront. So I'm wondering, we don't want big boats, we only want small boats. I just don't understand. I think it needs to be
In the
defined.
discussion last meeting, I think it was George that raised the issue of the LNG plant
Right.
as being use of the deep water port for an industrial that would be a distraction from what we're about.
And I understand that, I just,
Yeah.
reading it flat, don't understand the definition of the
Put
word.
an example or
You
something.
need an
Yeah.
example,
I'll clean it up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Stretch.
Okay. Okay.
Everybody,
I would just ask if folks might be interested in adding one other bullet, and I just thought of this, so I haven't really thought it through, that a possible land use objective might be to recognize that given Harpswell's topography and layout, a land use objective might be to protect marine water quality by paying closer attention to the activities that happen on land. Because there's a relationship between land use and development and water quality on the shore in Harpswell.
okay, what I see in, let's say, bullet 3 under
Yeah,
Yeah.
improve the quality of coastal waters, especially those that are harvested by managing both quantity and quality of runoff from the land.
Yeah, that's good.
Is that good?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, anything else on objectives?
Okay, I think it's good. I'm sorry.
I just have a question. When we say commercial fishing,
I wasn't finished.
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was pausing.
put your
My
head down.
mind- my
That
mind
was a comma.
Still.
Semicolon.
I would just say something like recognizing, improve the quality, improve and protect. Improve and protect the quality of coastal waters, especially those that are harvested by managing, those are harvested,
By managing both quantity and.
Why don't you,
the
I think-
quantity, and, no, I want to figure it out now, if you don't mind, because I'm probably going to be all done pretty soon, and
if you've got a good idea and you could share it with
so,
George, and we
anyway,
all
just
agree to it.
recognizing the relationship between land use and water quality.
Yeah.
Okay, I will edit.
Okay. Anybody have any objection to that?
No.
All right, sir.
Hold on.
On page 3.
Land use objectives. any
Okay, close the book on land use objectives.
I just
Brian.
have a question on definitions. When we say commercial fishing, do we also mean clamming
Yes.
and water worming?
I'm
and-
writing it right now. It'll say fishing, harvesting in parentheses, all the same.
Yeah,
All of it.
I think that just needs to be
Fine.
an agreed
Absolutely,
definition.
absolutely.
Okay? Land use policies. I'm gonna go back to what I said in the beginning. I tried to think about those things that were kind of all-encompassing, so that if you look at what's in the March draft, in each land use designation, it says LID and it says, and so this was an attempt to say, what are the kind of overarching issues and policies related to land use? And I would suggest we start and look at the goals. And do these 7 goals encompass those overarching issues? Are they too many? And so, and for instance, in Goal 4, I talk about character and scale of new development, because I don't think in each land use designation, we need to say, adopt design standards in it. This is intended to say, we're gonna do that. Okay. Maintain the town's scenic and rural character, a goal of land use. Any objection?
No.
Go.
Could
You
you,
want to object?
no, again, it's just a question. Discourage the creation of new lots fronting on public roads.
Hold on, we're not down there yet. We're just at the
Number
goal,
1,
Just at the
goal
goal.
1.
just
Not the
at the goal.
Maintain the town's scenic and rural character, right?
Yeah.
Right, but just the goal. Is that a goal?
Oh.
To maintain the town's scenic and rural character?
Yes.
Any objection to that? Okay. Sorry to be sort of dogmatic about this, but the second one is manage the town's fractured bedrock aquifer. And I use the word manage after many revisions because it involves a number of issues that are being discussed.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Means encourage the infiltration of precipitation into the ground, reduce the demand for the use of groundwater, and base decisions on groundwater resource on science.
Be happy to expand, but we don't think it's necessary.
What other words were you thinking of? What other words were you thinking of?
The verb manage.
Yeah, what other words were you thinking of besides manage?
I don't remember at this point the sentence. That sentence had a number of iterations as I tried to be neutral.
And I'll also say that it follows the wording that we're using in the both programs we have coming up. We're talking about managing our resource.
Okay? It seems to me that's an important goal, and, all right, leave it there. Protect the water quality of the town's water bodies. This sort of goes back to Amy's observation about there, and deals with primarily managing the quality of stormwater runoff. Keep going.
Yep.
Goal 4, assure that the character and scale of new development is appropriate for Harpswell.
I have a question about that. Is there an example in the last 10 years where new development has not been appropriate? A feeling this is something that needs to be corrected, or is it? I'm not sure we're solving a problem that doesn't exist. I'm not sure.
Mary Ann?
I'm aware of 2 residential housings that are much larger, getting into the 5,000 to 8,000 square foot size, which is almost the same size that some small businesses are.
I would agree with that.
No, I'm talking about residences, but there's two new, there are permits out for 2 residences that are very, very large.
Yeah,
Okay,
right,
yeah.
It's just, the reason I raise it is because it's a very subjective thing to talk about character.
Yes, it is.
You're talking about something very specific. It strikes me we could deal with in some other area, but it just strikes me as just an awfully large, kind of fluffy character thing.
I don't disagree with that. I think it's very difficult, unless you have something like a village review board that's in an historic district. It's almost impossible to create design mandates that stick. I mean, you get sued and you'd lose. So it's feel-good language, but I don't think it has any weight at all in realistic terms.
Just go with scale.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I think, another example is on Bethel Point, the two properties where, partially because of blowdown, but the land just got stripped. Absolutely stripped. And that's, that is one thing. People coming in wanting to create a suburban lawn in Harpswell. So there are lots of different things, but I agree with Bob, it's just not.
All right, how would you change, first of all, do we keep goal 4 at all?
Keep goal 4, but just deletes character and go, just say scale.
Thank you.
You're talking about fitting in. I mean, for example, if somebody wants to come in and build on a available lot, a modern home, that, at first blush, would not necessarily fit the quote character, the New England character, if you will, of the town. But if it's appropriately sized and scaled, why would you want to limit sort of an artistic expression based on?
Eye of the beholder.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, I got my editing pen out
Okay.
that says goal 4 becomes assured that the scale of new development is appropriate for Harpswell.
appropriate is the same problem as character. It's in the eye of the beholder. I mean, are we prepared to say there should be the equivalent of a historic district board with goal? In other words, how do we possibly do that?
I think we're getting caught up in being more specific than is necessary for this stage of the process. We're trying to articulate general goals and visions for the community. And sort of being very specific about what all the meanings of these terms are, makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I'm okay with leaving it as it is.
You know, I would prefer to leave it as is.
Yeah.
Leave it as character and scale.
You know? And let future
I was gonna say,
groups worry about it.
yeah,
Is this kicking the can,
Of course.
down the road?
Yes.
We're
Yeah.
kicking lots of cans down the road. This
That's
is
what
one of
this
the
whole
ones
comp plan
I'm willing to
Are
kick.
there, at
It's a
some
lot of
point
fun.
this evening, do we plan to take any responsibility, or are we just gonna kick cans?
I don't
But
think this,
we're taking the responsibility of, sort of first, establishing our goals and wants and, character and scale, there's part of that, but it does have to be defined and,
and that's a job for later,
yeah,
not for now.
implementation and legal stuff.
I think most people would agree with this. They might not really agree on how it's implemented exactly, but I think they would agree with the statement.
At a previous meeting, and I think also in the March plan, in terms of discussion of commercial and industrial uses in the interior district, there was discussion about a limit on the size of buildings. And I think that's sort of where this comes from, that if somebody wanted to come in and build a 200,000 square foot cold storage building, that
It's important to be able to land my private plane indoors.
Right.
now there's a trick. Is that a retractable roof? All right. All right, so we're gonna leave that the way it is and leave it in?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, 5. Require that new development consider the implications of climate change. Goal?
Yes.
Yes.
Any objections? Okay,
Where's Matt?
what was that?
Where's Matt?
Why?
It's a hoax.
I know, I saw concrete being poured today, I thought of him.
Well, maybe you say there aren't any implications, and then that's an easy answer.
Right. Yes.
Facilitate the continuation of the working waterfront. Another one where I had to do some wordsmithing.
Continuation and health.
Preservation is better.
You're editing now.
Yep.
Is this a response to a threat, or is this, like, is the working waterfront under threat that it won't be able to continue, or is this just more like, keep doing what we're doing, or?
Yeah, I think more of a continuation of what we're doing.
Okay, yeah,
It's not necessarily under threat.
okay.
That's not what I hear from certain members of this group, but
I think it's okay for now. It's a tough one, but I think it's okay for now.
Yeah.
Okay, for now is
Yeah.
our
Okay.
principles.
all right, and then goal 7, expand the opportunities for attainable housing.
Great.
All right, any other goals that should be added? This doesn't address fiscal issues that are impacted by land use.
I don't think it has to.
I'm not suggesting that it does.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't include it. I'm just,
No, just spouting off.
anything else? Okay, now I'm gonna go back to Brian.
Strategy?
Uh-oh.
Let's go back to maintain the town's scenic and rural character. In my job, I climbed out on the limb and said, maintain the character of the community's public roads. For those of you who may not be aware, there already is a requirement that requires a vegetated buffer along the state routes if you're going to do a subdivision. And the Quahog Farm subdivision has a landscaped buffer, not a landscaped, a vegetated buffer along Route 24 that's retained and restricted, deed restricted as to what you can do to it. So I included maintain the character of the community's public roads, and then I put under maintain the rural scenic character of the community, and I pulled in a bunch of things under both of those.
Mark, excuse me. Can we go back to policy 1.1?
Yep,
Strategy 2, number 2, 1.1.2.
yep.
I have a question. If we're going to discourage the creation of new lots fronting on public roads by increasing the minimum lot frontage to 100, how does that affect single development of homes that happen to be smaller lots on a public road?
If it's an existing lot, it doesn't. If you're creating a new lot, it does.
Okay, so it would have to be a lot already in,
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think there's a lot of situations where this applies, but there are
yeah.
some areas with considerable frontage on town or state roads where, as Amy has often pointed out, if you look at 123, she would assert that the character has changed, not by the subdivisions that have occurred, but by the lot-by-lot construction of houses. True?
It's true. you know, one of the things that really saves 123, although some people might disagree with this, is that it's really an historic road. It was laid out in 1740-something by the surveyors, Pejupscot surveyors or someone like that. And so folks own property right to the edge of that road. What the state of Maine has done, for example, on 24, where they own a wider section of the road, is that they've come in and really widened the road. And it's great in some ways for driving. It does tend to increase speeds. It allows for bike lanes that are right along the highway. So, but in terms of rural character, it really just makes it look like any road, anywhere. Because MDOT just uses its straight linear stuff, and they want to make it easy for the car, and that's what they do. But 123 is different. The state doesn't own those side areas. And you notice that when you come in on 123, it really feels different. And it does mean you have to go slower, and it does make it more dangerous and difficult for bicyclists, no doubt about it. But it does preserve the visual integrity of those roads. If anybody's been to England, you see exactly what I'm talking about.
No, and I just, back to what Mark said, when we're saying creation of new lots, then we're taking an existing lot, is what you're saying, and
Yep.
dividing it.
Yep.
So a small lot, by virtue of the fact that it's a lot now, this does not apply to it.
Mary Ann, I'm sorry, go ahead.
My worry was whether it would hinder affordable housing at all. I mean, say somebody bought or was donated to, future affordable housing committee, a small lot that would correspond to whatever rules are written. And that would be an added cost for that lot.
Yep, it is potentially conflicts with that. If somebody wanted to come along and cut off 3 lots for attainable housing along an existing town road.
But even one lot,
If it's one lot, if it's an existing lot,
Doesn't apply.
no, it would be a new lot.
yeah. You can find ways around that when you write the rules, though.
Okay. It just, an aside, my wife's been coming to Harpswell probably since about 1947, and she recalls driving down Route 1, or being driven down Route 123 when all the trees would overhang it. So you were kind of driving down a tunnel.
Tunnel of trees.
But, that's not the case anymore.
Yes, sir.
I think just, you need to look into it, and maybe it makes sense. That whole thing about maintaining the character of roads, you use 3 different modifiers. You have state roads, local roads, and public roads. I don't know whether that public roads means state and local, or it means something separate. I know in some respects, I live on a dirt road, which is not maintained by the town, and in some respects, it's considered a public road in terms of the setbacks that I'm required on my land and everything else. So I think you just need to be very precise there. Maybe that is being precise, and I don't understand this.
No, let me,
But if it isn't, you need to be
Everything other
clear.
than private, right?
Yeah.
So most of our roads are private. So public would both be state and local,
Right.
but not private.
Your road don't count.
Pardon?
Your road doesn't count.
Yeah.
okay, and is the policies and strategies under goal 2 on target?
Goal 2 or goal 1?
I'm sorry, goal 1,
Policy 2.
Policy 2.
We've had a lot of discussion about rural character and maintaining rural character, and I think the fact that we're talking about this as a goal under our land use, future land use is appropriate. So I think that's definitely, and the last one, strategy 3, and strategy 4, I think that fits as well.
I've lost you. Okay,
So, I
you're on,
mean,
you're on
we have-
1.23.
Policy 1.2.
Three,
I'm sorry,
1.24.
strategy, I'm sorry, dealing with strategies, 1.2.3 and 1.2.4.
Got it.
I like that.
I think all of that is appropriate, based on what we've heard from the community and what we've talked about over the last several years here in this committee, task force.
One question regarding 1.2.1. We're eliciting, putting in a town, not a town, a private organization name. Has this been kind of discussed with the land trust?
Sorry. Has the land trust,
I don't know.
We're saying we're going to implement the open space plan in conjunction with the Harpswell Heritage Land Trust.
land trust has used the open space plan as a criteria for,
Okay, so
Easements
that's how you're
and
reading that.
preserve-
All righty,
since it was passed.
Yeah, so reiterating what already exists.
Yes.
okay.
All right, keep going. All right, I'm at goal 2 unless somebody's gonna stop me.
Go.
Aquifer.
God help us.
3 policies, encourage infiltration. Everybody should come to the workshop on
Next Wednesday,
the 30th, right? And costumes are encouraged?
certainly.
As a water witch?
That would be good, as a water witch. Second is reduce the demand for the use of groundwater. So 1 says, put more in. 2 says, take less out. And then the 3rd says, to the extent possible, base decisions about how groundwater should influence land use on science.
Sounds okay to me.
What'd you say, Bob?
I think it's a it could be a political question, hopefully not in Harpswell, but I mean, I think that based decisions upon good evidence, I think science is a term that is misused too often. What the hell is it? Except some people like the science of one issue and not the science of another issue. I would just say, base decision on I don't know, I give up. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I think we should
Unnecessary.
just say, we love science, and hope that nobody in the town has an issue with that.
I think, because that's one of the questions that kept coming up in our meetings, that we need science to show what our groundwater issues are.
Well,
So
you can
this
think
is
about it
good.
as,
We need evidence.
think about it as a scientific approach. Collect
Scientific
data,
Yeah.
which is what we're talking about.
Because that's what we're talking about.
I withdraw my comments.
Yeah,
They are not helpful.
All right, 2.1. We okay with strategies? We already do 1, 2, already do that.
Yep.
3, I put in that the town should also be looking at LID approaches to managing stormwater. As you may be aware, the Maine Department of Transportation got itself exempted from the state stormwater management requirements because it said, well, that'll cost us money to do that.
That's a great way to establish trust between the taxpayer and the state
It's
agency.
true. I was involved in the committee that was, and they came in and said, we'll kill this in the legislature if you don't exempt us from the stormwater provisions.
That's why People think government should be drowned in a bathtub or something like that.
Yes,
No, this was, all right.
first you gotta make it small enough.
Encouraging from infiltration, okay with those?
Yep.
Reduce the demand for groundwater? I snuck in 221,
I know.
because if you build new, you've got to use low water fixtures. And I'm a believer that in Harpswell, we probably still have a lot of old fixtures around.
We've had a fair amount of building in the last 20 years. My house was built in 2000, and it has a 1.2.
Right.
So we've been using them,
And the state code
long
requires it.
yeah, so we've been using them for a long time.
Right, but if you've got a 40-year-old bathroom
Might not.
and you're going to renovate it, should you be required to upgrade?
You can't buy anything but that.
brother, though, looking over your shoulder.
Well, it is. It absolutely is.
But on the other, just a quick aside, I had a leak in my kitchen faucet. Drip. Drip.
Gee, hope you come next Wednesday.
You would not believe, over 24 hours, the amount of water
Yeah.
that slow drip translated to. I kept a big pitcher underneath it, and every night, every morning I woke up, the entire pitcher was filled. And I was amazed at just what appeared to be a very slow drip in water, how much water was.
And toilets
Will
are
you tell us
even
that at
worse.
next week's meeting? Because we're going to ask
Chris,
those questions.
I was gonna say, the obvious question is, why did you fix your faucet?
I had somebody come in, I had Seabreeze come in today, they fixed it.
Oh, there you go.
But that's,
But it's amazing, just those little things that make a huge difference.
but in answer to Al's question, I would say we already require the use of low water use fixtures if you build new under the state code. If you do certain changes, you might not have to. You might be able to avoid that. And this simply says, you know, if you're gonna do stuff, you should bring it up to date.
Well, if state code already says we're supposed to do it, why is it here?
It says it for new construction. If you build an addition and you want to put a new bathroom in, you got to use low water use fixtures.
Exactly, so why?
But if you just want to come in and get a permit and do some stuff in your bathroom, and you're not going to replace the toilet or the shower, I don't think you have to meet that requirement.
I think this is get down into the weeds, and I'll be willing to bet there may be 2 or 3 people at the town meeting who will take great exception. They didn't like incandescent bulbs, and they're not gonna like this, but we can live with that, yep, I suppose.
We won't ask you to deal with it.
No.
I'll keep my mouth shut.
I'm willing to sacrifice 221.
I think part of the cohesiveness of the, you know, how we develop is if everybody gets treated the same. So if you know your neighbor got to use a different fixture because they were just expanding or rebuilding, but you had to use something else, that, you know, I just think we're all in this together. That's what's, I just want to say that. We're all in it together, and I think we should leave it in.
Yeah. Big brother, but what the hell?
Who listens to Big Brother?
I don't know how to tell you this, but this whole section is about Big Brother.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I was gonna comment on the rest of them, but I will now leave it alone. If we're basic, I mean, the trouble with we're all in this together is there is not necessarily a consensus of what we should be all in this together.
That is
about.
true,
No.
that's very
And to-
true.
To start sort of legislating stuff because some of us think it's a great idea is not always good
Oh,
governance, I think.
take it
But
out.
anyway,
It's fine with me.
I'll leave it in. And Mark, I like your attitude, though, and I support,
What's that?
all the things that you have here, I'm calling Big Brother, I don't have a problem in the world with. I just not sure it should be town policy.
Well,
Well, remember, we're talking about strategies here. And
Yeah.
Right.
part of the
Yeah.
thing is you can take a look at the strategies, you can kind of cherry pick strategies that will work in the short term, maybe things that are tougher to work with, and you can kind of pick and choose in a,
That's helpful. That's helpful for us.
okay,
Yeah.
And that would have to be an ordinance change to do that.
yeah.
But Amy's right, we're all in this together, and I know you guys say it's Big Brother. By the same token, a few years ago, one of our seasonal neighbors had trouble getting their well going after, starting up the new season. And the plumber immediately told her to come over to our property to see if we had done anything that drew water out that damaged her access to water, and we hadn't. But there's this other sense of we're in it together, which is like, they
Yeah.
screwed it up for me, so we might as well look at the positive side of it.
All right, I'm gonna keep going, policy 2.3. This sort of ties in with some of the discussion that's been going on about the need for better data on wells. The maybe marginal conformance with the reporting requirement for new wells that results in incomplete data being available on new wells. I'm relying on the Conservation Commission for that position. Undertake a comprehensive update of the previous groundwater studies. And I put in this 234 about the location of wells relative to the shoreline in areas with saltwater intrusion. And currently, we, through the state rules, regulate the relationship of septic systems to the highest annual tide line, but we don't, nobody regulates where you can put wells. And,
And that's a service to anybody building new.
right, and as, again, I think is the, what was her name, Jessica? The state hydrologist, talked at some length about the issue of saltwater intrusion. As you pull more out behind the interface, you create the potential to move that saltwater, freshwater interface inward toward the land and there.
Under questioning, she couldn't quantify how far in. She said, in is better than out.
Right.
But she basically said, the further in, it's the better, but she couldn't qualify. And
Correct.
how you would make
Doesn't
this
have X-ray
significant,
vision.
it's not clear, but
Yeah.
we're not seeking that kind of
There's
clarity.
no
No,
way
we're
to tell.
just saying as far back as you can,
Yeah,
at least.
Give it consideration, that's what we're saying.
it's another aspiration, that's good.
Okay, I'm gonna go to goal 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Protect the water quality of the town's water bodies. And I put a number of little short strategies under manage the quality of stormwater runoff. Vegetative buffers
Yep.
along streams and drainage ways. Use of LID BMTs in new development. Maintain vegetative buffers adjacent to wetlands. And it's interesting that if you look at the rules, for instance, in subdivisions, some wetlands you have to have a buffer, some wetlands you don't have to have a buffer, depending upon which type of wetland they are. And so this says, maybe we should think about that in a little more detail, and manage the use of fertilizers and pesticides, particularly in focus of areas adjacent to coastal and freshwater wetland streams and drainage ways. And the existing pesticide ordinance does that, sort of, but it doesn't cover all of those water bodies.
I just want to mention again, the use of the word streams, I find it that confusing because the DEP is, their definition of streams would eliminate, I don't know how many, but my guess is most of what I would call a stream in Harpswell.
Oh, yeah.
So I just,
Well, I disagree with that.
okay,
If you use the DEP definition of streams, what you think of as streams would all be included in that.
even if it doesn't result in the confluence of two.
That
permanent
only
streams?
applies to shoreland zoning.
We need, we
Would you
need
explain
to be
that?
clear.
I don't understand what that means.
That definition of a stream is a shoreland zoning definition of stream.
So are you suggesting that shoreland zone streams are less protected than streams in the inland area?
I am suggesting that, one, there is a conflict between the state definition of streams within shoreland areas and the state definition of streams under the Natural Resources Protection Act that applies everywhere. And I am suggesting, no, I'm saying, that in Harpswell, we do not have local regulation of streams as defined by the state for NERPA purposes, and the state has determined that there are no streams in shoreland areas that meet the shoreland definitions.
Well, that clears it up for me.
Now, what that means is we have had situations, well, to me, the implication of that is that we have had situations in Harpswell where there are streams. There ain't no doubt about the fact that they are streams. They are not in shoreland areas. They are regulated by the state, but the state chooses not to vigorously enforce its rules. The town can do nothing about that because we have no local regulations on the protection of streams outside of shoreland areas where we don't have any streams.
So we should be looking to clear that up and put something in to have a local
Position on it, yeah.
organization on that.
I will try and better define stream.
Please
Can't do any worse.
So the streams that run through my property and end up in the shoreland zone stop being streams when they get into the
Yes.
shoreland zone.
Are they? Yes.
Yeah,
I'd like them regulated anyway.
See, that's the, and
that's the problem.
This is partly why I sent that article out, which most of you couldn't open, but maybe some of you could, just about FEMA's lack of even mapping streams in North Carolina, and that's where most of the damage came from the storm. And Harpswell's not North Carolina, but I sent another article out to some of those folks about shoreline protection efforts in England, where they're just really taking agricultural land and just giving it back to the estuaries and the marshes and the streams that feed into those, and what an amazing job that's doing of retaining water and preventing flooding. And it's really, I mean, that's the science in action right there. So a problem prevented is a problem solved. So I think we should, I would hope that we could do a better job than we do now of regulating streams, but I understand that when you do that, you do make it harder to develop a piece of land.
yep.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And this is a case, I hate to say this, but I get in trouble when I say this. This is a case where if you follow the state rules in NERPA relative to streams, and you do it right, everything is fine. If you violate the rules, the town's experience has been there is a problem with getting DEP to enforce its rules. Because they would say they're overworked, understaffed, and they have bigger fish to fry than somebody clearing vegetation along a little stream in Harpswell. And so this envisions that the town would essentially piggyback on the state rules, in my mind, so that the town could enforce what you're already supposed to be doing under the state rules.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.
Okay, anything else under
I
3.1?
have a question of curiosity. You mean to say that if there's a state rule, and the town can't enforce a state rule?
That's correct. Can't take enforcement action.
Ah, okay. Didn't know that.
What's that place that, not Ash,
Yeah, Allen Point Road.
Allen Point Road?
There have been a couple of
Yeah, there's a couple.
situations.
Yeah, okay.
Very-
And so the answer is, we can call DEP
I understand.
and say they're violating the rules,
Yeah.
but the town can't go out and say, you gotta stop doing that, you gotta replant.
Understood.
Only DEP can enforce what the state rules are.
Yep. I ran into that a couple of years ago over to Harpswell.
Yep.
I get dragged into it. And DEP says, I don't want anything to do with it. You know, the neighbor, one neighbor's complaining about the other neighbor.
Yeah.
And it would make those in Harpswell feel that if we can at least help them, because they feel now that we're not listening,
Right,
and can be very vocal about it over and over again.
yep. And it's not just one situation.
No,
Okay, I'm gonna keep going.
One other
Yes.
thing,
Roll Tide.
Goal 4?
Mark, I had one other thing on that one.
Yep.
We live in Maine, we get snow and ice. Does anybody ever wanna talk about, salting and sanding roads and how that runs off?
We have had that conversation.
I don't know,
Yes.
yeah, I didn't
Oh,
wanna
yeah.
like,
We don't use salt anymore, we use sand, just sand.
just sand.
slight bit of salt,
No, we still use salt,
Oh, it's salted sand.
salt and
salt and sand.
But your
It's mixed together.
point
but-
is well made.
Not in certain areas. There's a section in Rose Island before the bridge.
Yeah.
There's no liquids used, or it's usually that sand. Where the houses are close to the road, they try not to put any, you know, sometimes they pre-treat the roads with whatever that liquid is, forget what it's called, but.
Urine.
What?
what?
Not really. No, I don't think it is.
Yes, it is.
Uric acid?
Uric acid is what it is.
Mark, or Matt, I'm sorry, you're right. We have had people come to the town complaining that their wells were contaminated with salt and other stuff because of salt.
Yeah.
I'm gonna suggest that's a valid issue, but it should be addressed back in
Yeah.
the water quality,
I
because
just
it's,
want Matt to
Yep.
know we heard him.
yep, that's,
Yeah,
I'll check on that.
We can't solve all the world's problems with this document.
Same people call them, saying the roads are slippery.
Yeah.
I'll have Ron call you.
Oh, put some time aside.
What'd you say?
I said, put some time aside.
Are you a Red Sox fan?
Me?
Well, from New England, so.
No, that's not the question. Are you a Red Sox fan?
Can we?
Oh, okay, then Ron will talk to you. All right, goal 4. We left in character. It says assure that the character and scale of new development. One section says non-residential uses, the other section says residential uses. They are slightly different.
Everybody's quiet, move on.
they look okay to me.
Okay, goal 5. Implications of climate change. Evaluate areas that may be subject to future sea level rise. This reflects a potential project of the RNS committee to try and integrate the recent floodplain maps that aren't based on sea level rise with the potential for sea level rise, to understand if sea level rise occurs, what might get wet.
And just a really quick point, because you brought it out to me. Those of you who are engineers realize that the bottom, the water bottom of the ocean is irregular,
Yes.
which affects the amount of
Right.
rise, and you can't just add 2 or 3 feet to what we have. It'd be more accurate.
Right. And then manage development in areas subject to future inundation. We have had various discussions about how you should treat areas that are within both existing and potentially future flood areas. Have I worn you down? Okay. 6 is facilitate the continuation of the working waterfront. And this really goes, I think it was Peter or Mary Ann earlier. This talks about doing a number of things. And I don't know how relevant they are, but what the hell. One is this idea of merging the CF 1 and 2. Currently, the CF2 is a meaningless district. Essentially, it's a shoreland residential district, but to limit the ability to reuse redevelopment properties in there for residential use. I put in review the shoreland zoning ordinance for areas that may be suitable to be included in the commercial fishing zone. I know there was a review done,
2010.
yeah, I was gonna say 15 years ago, but I'm not sure what the basis of that was, because I think there are some areas that are used for commercial fishing activities that aren't included, and there's lots of areas that aren't used for commercial fishing or,
It was designed to be sure that we included all those small fishing wharves that are used by
Yep.
the lobstermen in residential districts.
yeah. So this says, go back and make sure that now, since there's been at least some additional changes and whatever that we know.
Probably fine.
I put in 6.1.3, which is kind of a bit of a fairy tale, but it is this issue of trying to identify and maintain traditional points of access. It's not an easy issue, but I think some communities have been successful in getting property owners to agree to a walking easement or whatever for people to get to the
There
shoreline.
was an article in the Press Herald today on that.
I'm sorry,
There
what?
was an article in the Press Herald today.
Yeah.
Did you send it?
I didn't send it, but I saw it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of a town that did that.
Yep. And then, again, this includes this prohibit the industrialization of areas of the shoreline with deep water access. And I have got some language from George that will,
Possible language.
yeah.
I'm not gonna put the noose on my own neck.
Fine, George, I just wanted to.
And it'll say in here, strategy 6.1.4, as proposed by George, comma.
Yeah, we'll do that. That's good. That's good.
All right.
Take all complaints to him.
And then protect working waterfront facilities. I know there have been some interest in various proposals to try and assure that commercial wharfs are able to continue, particularly in light of sea level rise and what have you. And this sort of creates a door opener. And then goal 7 says expand opportunities for attainable housing, and essentially says revise the land use regulations as recommended in housing for Harpswell. Maybe I need to expand that. For those two. Okay?
Go.
All right,
All right.
you're wearing them down.
Now, future land use plan, I haven't done anything with other than the introductory paragraph. This is all what was available to you at the last meeting.
Yeah.
For our next meeting, oop, you're not the chair, I'm looking for the chair.
It's over there.
Here.
I will go through and edit this and then flesh this out and do it. And now, hopefully after Thursday, that we have an agreement with Judy, prepare a revised map to go with it, for our, whatever it's gonna be, November 14th. Oops, see, I'm still looking for the chair. What's the meeting date for the next meeting?
I want to say,
13th?
7th or 8th of November. That's not right.
No.
No,
That's the
no, it's,
second Tuesday,
it's
but
the
it's
second Tuesday, it can't be the 7th.
No,
No, that's,
it's the following week.
that's a Thursday, the 7th.
And the first is a
Second
Friday,
Tuesday is
right?
the 12th.
Yeah, because election day
Well,
is,
Second Tuesday is the 12th.
Second Tuesday's, okay, the 12th November, 12th November.
Yep,
Is that a
so,
holiday?
so I will get that done, get that out to you ahead of time, so we can look at that and hopefully package that up.
Yeah, and that'll be our last meeting in November, so that's gonna be an important thing to close the book on. So. All right, thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions?
yeah.
Good job by Mark.
When is Veterans Day?
Veterans.
Veterans Day is the 11th, right? Didn't we vote to move it back to the real
Monday?
11/11/11?
That's what I'm wondering if it conflicts with
Right.
this meeting.
Armistice Day.
No,
Well,
it's
yeah.
not gonna conflict.
It's not, you checked it out, okay, good for you. Take your word.
Okay. Just to reiterate, our next meeting, November 12th, no meeting later in the month, and then all the meetings from now on will be here. We won't have to worry about going up, deconflicting with energy and technology to make that happen, so.
Why do you
Any
think
final
about
comments from anybody? All right, again, the goal is to try to get most of this review done by November, end of November, sometime like that. Get it over to Viewshed to reformat. They are not going to check to make sure that whatever we give them is deconflicted throughout the document. So we still have to make sure that things are deconflicted, and that's our responsibility. They are gonna put out new maps, the future land use map. And also, I would just remind people, in this implementation plan that we laid out here.
Yes, that needs to be revised.
Needs to be revised. for future
Thank
land
you,
use
you took the words out of my mouth.
Okay. So that's the kind of stuff that we're still gonna have to do, and once we get that sorted out, Viewshed will take it and make it look pretty, but they're not gonna delve into it to any great depth.
Mr. Chairman,
Right.
Matt and I had a discussion this afternoon about part 1 and part 2 of the plan.
You?
Matt.
What was that?
That's a, which,
Oh, that Matt.
yeah.
And that is my understanding of the early concept of the task force was that the goal would be to produce a relatively small document with, I'm going to call it the important stuff in, And the background information, AKA the inventories, would sort of be a separate piece. And I think it's worth considering as the task force goes forward to presenting a revised document, whether it wants to, is still comfortable with that approach, one, because obviously back in March, the whole thing was presented to everybody, and everybody said, whoa, look at all of this. Do you want to think about, you know, having two pieces that are interrelated, and only make the first piece, I'm gonna call it broadly available, with a way that you can go look at part two if you really wanna know about the inventory.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I think, I don't think you have to resolve that tonight, but I
Let's
think
about it and let's come to a decision next meeting.
there are pros and cons of either one.
Right,
What are you trying to hide by not
right.
showing us part two?
Well, but you can make part two easily available for
Right.
people who are very enthusiastic about spending.
You
weeks.
Decide
obviously
next meeting.
Yeah, that-
don't have the philosophy of evil theories that we're trying to hide something from the public.
But we did that with the open space plan, and it went quite well, that way.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay,
that's great.
All right?
Any final comments before we adjourn?
Good meeting.
Yeah.
No brave souls?
Word for it.
Okay, seeing none?
Whoops. Mr. Chairman, I just want to say thank you for putting the tables in the semicircle format.
I think these guys, I don't take any credit for them, but these guys,
wasn't very good at geometry, was he?
No, that's all right.
yeah.
Because last night when I got home, my wife was listening to a TED Talk on leadership. And the second rule was always put it in a circle.
Well, if this is a
If you're
circle,
gonna have a discussion,
Committee definition of a circle.
it's close, it's close.
Yeah.
It's a start.
You can see.
I've
most of the
argued
other
for this for 2 years, and finally we're doing it.
There you go.
well, thank you. I don't claim credit for it, but thank you anyway.
Amy, good
No
luck.
comments, this meeting's reserved.
You're going